to another segment of the Grassy Knoll. I'll tell you the truth. We're taping this on December 23rd. Foreplay on December 28th. We have with us the Collins brothers. They're going to be on with us again tomorrow. And we're going to talk about a lot of things. So that we don't even know what we're going to talk about, but we're going to talk about it. So, Philip and Paul, thanks very much for coming back.
Thanks for having us back, Viz.
Alrighty. Look, first of all, there are two titles that have come out from you fellas. It is The Hidden Face of Terrorism and The Ascendancy of the Scientific Dictatorship. Let me ask you this. I never have. When did you guys get it? And then after that, how long did it take you to decide, you had a pretty good footing on what was going on, to go ahead and let's say, Paul, you attended the first book, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
All right, so why don't you bring us back? How did you both come upon it? Was one of you first? Did you both see it together?
It was definitely Paul first, yeah.
The epiphany really started to come back when I was about 17. I started to get an idea that everything was not as it...
Were you in high school then? Were you a high school senior or something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, I don't mean to butt in, but did you have some teachers that got it, or was this something that happened outside the classroom?
Actually, it's a little bit of both. Back when I was in high school at that time, I was going to school in Colorado, and people out in Colorado are a different sort. They're a rugged individualist type, and there is a real kind of populist feel, and I don't mean populism in the pejorative sense of like a left-wing kind of
political party,
yeah.
Okay.
I just mean there's a healthy suspicion as far as the federal government goes. There's a lot of questioning going on. There was a lot of kids that I ran with that were anarchist, and while their anarchist ideology was questionable, to say the least, that anti-authoritarian edge of theirs caused them to ask a lot of questions, and it got me asking questions too, and coming across a lot of the right answers. Now, from the time I was 17 to about the time I would say I was 23, I didn't really have a perfect grasp on things. Right around the time I was 23, I moved out to Ohio in about 95, and what happened was I was going to a community college out here, and I got with a teacher who basically taught me constitutional law and criminal justice. And this teacher had been with the Central Intelligence Agency when he was in Vietnam. He was a Marine, and they recruited him. And what they basically said is, they said, "Well, you're a nice guy, and we would like you to go and talk to the indigenous population, and then report back to us on what they tell you." And they created a legend for him. A legend is a fake backstory where he was basically a Canadian national. That this was the legend. He's Italian, but they.
Well, he could still be Canadian. I mean.
Yeah.
Good.
But the legend was that he was a Canadian national, and he was running a trading post and doing trading with the indigenous population. And they got his trading post all set up, and he basically run this, and MVA and Viet Cong would come to the post, and he'd talk to them, and like, "Oh, do you know such and such?" Yeah, I know such and such. That's my uncle. Yeah, he's up on this hill over here, and he'd say, "Oh, okay," and then he'd take that back to his superiors, and lo and behold, the next day that mountain or hill would get bombed, invariably. And what happened was that he befriended a MVA general, and the MVA general really warmed up to him. They're still friends to this very day. And he basically asked him if he would go with him, if he'd like to go with him for 3 days to Hanoi. And my teacher was not thrilled about this idea, but he reported back to his superiors with the agency, and they said, well, of course, we want you to go to Hanoi, and collect intel. So he ended up going, and he spent 3 days there. He was the only white guy in the middle of Hanoi, so, he properly, he was scared out of his wits. He was fearful. He was just feared for his life as to what would happen to him if he got caught doing anything. And so when he reported back, they were just disappointed as all get out with his intel. And somebody in the agency spilled the beans and blew his cover because they were mad at him because of the poor job that he had done. And that what happened was his friend in the MVA, the general friend of his, ended up saving his life and saving him from a lot of MVA guys that basically wanted to kill him because a lot of intel that he had collected while running that trading post had led to the deaths of a lot of people that they knew, family members and friends. And what this led to him finding out was that there is a dimension to politics that is very seldom spoken of, and it's known as parapolitics or deep politics. It's the methods and the means that are employed by different factions of the ruling elite, the oligarchical establishment, and then not spoken of. These different methods that are used that are actually criminal. And what he did is he started to explain the world as it really worked to me and to other people in my class. And that's really what got me on the right path, I have to say.
All right, how many years after you had that experience did you start to write what would become the hidden face of terrorism?
It really took. I'm more so an actor than I mean, that's what I started off doing. Is I loved acting, and it took a while for the acting to start to slow down before I really started to actually contemplate writing anything over the topic and trying to actually publish it.
Yeah, but when we woke up on September 11th, 2001, when we were basically awoken by the the news reports of these the two towers coming down, and basically both Paul and I had enough foresight, as as did probably you and several other patriots, to see the pretext was already in place there for a police state, for the establishment of a more authoritarian surveillance society.
You could see the wheels turning.
Yeah,
you could see the modus operandi.
And so it was at that juncture that both Paul and I felt very compelled to start writing about it. Paul,
what happened is that I basically put together a 40-page report called The Hidden Face of Terrorism for a criminology class that I was attending at that time. And what I said is, okay, I'll see how this flies, and if it and based on the response to this paper, I may or may not expand it into a book.
Now, did you were you at Wright State when this started?
Yeah. I was at Wright State. Prior to that, I had gone to Urbana University, and what happened is that they basically hiked our tuition, and it was like just no way in hell that it was going to happen. And so we ended up taking a year off from school that year, and ended up going to Wright State the year after.
Is Urbana in Ohio?
Yeah, Urbana is in Ohio, yeah. We've been to several different, we started college out in Colorado, going to a community college out there. Then we went to a community college here. We went to Clark State, and that's where I met my professor, the teacher that I'm talking about. He's also a judge in the area. He has a court here in Ohio, in the local area. And we got our our associate's degree at the Clark State, and then we're going to get the bachelor's at Urbana, but it just didn't pan out because the prices were ridiculous. I loved the university and everything, and I loved it. I loved the atmosphere, but it was just too steep.
Well, I take it Urbana was private. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was
right,
private.
Yeah. Okay.
It was private, and that's usually the way that it goes with private institutions such as that. People might ask, well, God, that's a long time to be in school. Why did it take so long? Well, the prices are just so high that sometimes you go and you don't take a full course. You don't take a full load. You take one course. You take two courses. When I was finishing up this last year, I was down to taking one course per semester. And everything,
Plus you have the proverbial, in the words of most insurance claimsmen, the proverbial acts of God, so to speak. Although you really wonder, they're so terrible, you wonder how in the world God could have his hand in that situation. For instance, we were in a relatively serious car wreck and everything, and that took a financial toll on us for a time there, so we had to recover from that. I mean, it was just a series of things. So I mean, finally, it led really to Wright State, and finally, it was pretty much that university from which we graduated with our bachelors.
But at Wright State, didn't you find a professor that if he didn't agree with all that you were putting forth, was at least nurturing in the sense of helping you?
Absolutely. Well, what happened with the Hidden Face when I put that forward in the criminology class, the instructor didn't like everything that I was saying, but she begrudgingly had to give it to me, and had to say, well, there's something to what you're saying here. There's substance to this.
Yeah.
And but I mean, like, through that response was basically what buttressed my,
the overall conviction.
Yeah.
And with me, as you recall, the first show that we ever did, Viz, was over my article, The Semiotic Deception of 9/11. And the instructor really responsible for inspiring that, and in fact I cite his article in my article, because he basically gave us the semiotic analysis of the media images surrounding 9/11. He was my one of my media criticism instructors, and he's a fiercely partisan individual, extremely left wing, extremely secular progressive, and yet as a semiotician, what he was showing was 100% synchronizing with a lot of my research, because before that I had been pretty much examining, researching the possibility of predictive programming. Of course, you have H.G. Wells's Shape of Things to Come, which prognosticated with uncanny precision world events that were to unfold. And I was basically looking into the possibilities that to a certain extent, certain narrative paradigms are built into entertainment, into pop culture, and those narrative paradigms are basically digested on an unconscious level by the public imagination, by the public mind, and then unconsciously we tangibly enact those very same narrative paradigms. And what he showed was how during September 11th, with the juxtaposition of certain images presented on MSNBC, in particularly archived footage of Palestinian protesters in the West Bank, which, by the way, they had been a voiceover narrative. They basically stated that footage was from that very day, which later on MSNBC had to admit that they had committed a breach of ethics because that was archived footage. That was not footage from that very same day. Of course, any educated person could have told you that because it was daylight in the footage, and at the time it was daylight over here.
So it should have been night, yeah.
Yeah, completely, totally different side of the world. But they juxtaposed that footage with an unsubstantiated wire from the West Bank saying that these Palestinian protesters were chanting "God is great" and basically praising Osama bin Laden for the attacks on the World Trade Center and what have you. And then, of course, you had Ron and Sanya making an intertextual reference to Independence Day.
Yeah.
And Independence Day was an overtly globalist film. Its themes were overtly globalist, very much pro-world government. And also the film established as its binary opposition the paradigm, the narrative paradigm of good versus evil. And so what my instructor showed, and mind you, he's a fiercely partisan individual, he's left-wing, he is certainly not a conspiracy theorist, or, certainly not friendly to a conspiratorial worldview, unless, of course, it's somebody on the right. But
exactly.
Yeah, but he demonstrated quite beautifully how that the juxtaposition of those images, Ron and Sanya's intertextual reference to the Independence Day, established a paradigm, a narrative paradigm for the post 9/11 world, and that was the binary opposition of good Americans versus evil Arabs. And of course, the Arabs became analogous to the alien invaders from Independence Day, and America became analogous to the beleaguered homeworld. And this was again completely from a totally non-conspiratorial source. It was completely from a semiotic perspective.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's no problem. But and that was what was most compelling to me. That's what edified my research and edified my convictions. Because I'm always looking for, in terms of sources, I'm always looking for sources that are not necessarily amicable to my worldview. Because if they are not amicable to my worldview, then they do not exhibit the predisposition to appease my theses or my arguments, and as such, they only strengthen them. And so it was really at Wright State that a lot of the work for the Ascendancy of Scientific Dictatorship was assembled and came together.
Well, I want to talk about 9/11, and for a lot of reasons, and especially the article that first brought me your way tomorrow. But what I want to go over to, and that is, I had, as I told you last time you were on, I guess, that I had looked at some eugenics information, and of course, it goes invariably back to H.G. Wells. I'll tell you what, he was a son of a bitch.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what a nasty guy.
Oh, man, he was a horrible, horrible person.
But I mean, when I think about the scientific dictatorship, of course, then I think about Huxley.
Yeah.
And Aldous took the ball from H.G., although he probably was a lot better, softer salesman.
Absolutely.
But H.G. had taken it from Huxley's grandfather, and also, and let me ask you this. Here's a capsule question about this, and then I want to get back to it.
Sure.
Do you guys get the feeling that Darwin was a useful tool, probably less bright than we give him credit for, and that he found himself in a position where Galton and the boys used him?
Darwin was never really one for argument, and he was never really one to start a debate. He just wanted to get his work out there.
Yeah, he was more or less a recluse. And I'm not going to say he was a stupid man, but let's just put it this way: he flunked miserably out of medical school.
Yeah, well, so did I, but I kind of think I'm smart.
Yeah, exactly. And here he is. He's postulating some seriously. He's coming up with some seriously radical postulations regarding biology, in particular human biology, and yet he has no expertise in a field that concerns itself with biology.
And I erroneously stated, I think, that Erasmus was his father. Indeed, it was his grandfather?
Grandfather, absolutely.
Okay.
And also, Erasmus was a Freemason. He was also, I guess you could say, he presided over a quasi-secret society known as the Lunar Society.
Which one?
the Lunar Society.
Okay.
And the Lunar Society basically was kind of the precursor to the British Royal Society that would act as the chief, I guess, media organ that would promulgate Darwin's work.
Well,
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, but didn't this Erasmus actually do some work in this field as well?
Absolutely. Erasmus developed several concepts that would be integral to the development of Darwin's evolutionary theory. Basically, the whole idea of evolution predates Darwin. It goes back several years. In fact, it's an older belief. It's an older occult belief known as transformism. And as you know, we did the series The Magicians of Mutability, and that was premised on the chief central precept of transformism. Transformism held in a rather Lamarckian sense that man was inherently mutable, that he could will himself to change. And by changing, we're not talking just any sort of subtle change. We're talking a full-on transformation. In a more Nietzschean sense, humanity becoming something other than humanity, overcoming its humanity and becoming an Ubermensch, a superhumanity, a god. And this doctrine of transformism goes all the way back to 6,000 years to Mesopotamia, to the ancient mystery cults of Mesopotamia, of Babylon and of Egypt. And basically what Darwin did was he basically reiterated all those concepts and those precepts of that occult religion within the context of metaphysical naturalism. In a neo-Gnostic sense, he kind of emanetized those otherwise spiritual and transcendent precepts of this older occult religion. And Darwin himself had some proclivities, some propensities towards occult beliefs. He always referred to nature. For somebody who was an atheist, he always referred to nature as a she, or ascribed to it certain human characteristics, and such anthropomorphism is very unbecoming of an atheist. So, at least on some unconscious level, Darwin was, gravitating towards these older occult beliefs, and I believe that was in part chiefly because of the influence of his grandfather Erasmus, who wrote Zoonomia, which was the precursor to Origin of the Species, and Zoonomia included in it several Rosicrucian concepts and Rosicrucian ideas, and so that kind of ideational continuum was transmitted to Darwin rather unconsciously, and so of course a lot of it shows up in Darwin's work.
Well, first of all, I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's. Nobody's an atheist. They can say they're an atheist, but they're not. Everybody believes in somebody. Everybody serves somebody.
Yeah.
Now, when you go back and you talk about Rosicrucian propensities and occultism or whatever, I look at all these cats basically as satanic. Mm-hmm. And now they carry this thing forward, and you have Aldous and Julian, probably much more glib than their predecessors, and certainly more spread out over what then was a wider media, not just books, but radio and TV. I mean, Aldous and Julian saw that.
Right, absolutely.
But when you start talking about a scientific dictatorship, and I think we're seeing the fruits of that right now, early, but still the fruits.
Right.
Are we talking about a world to come where a lot of what was in Brave New World, which when we all went to high school, we were told it's a dark satire, in fact it is the truth, are we looking at a depopulated state if they can have their way? And two, for those who are here, they're going to be basically pigeonholed in jobs, and they'll do whatever they have to keep their lives, their gray lives, somewhat palatable.
Well, let's just put it this way. As for a relatively depopulated world, according to a recent issue, an article in Christian Science Monitor, population implosion, contrary to many of the demographic speculations of, for instance, demographers from the United Nations and other Malthusian demographers, population implosion is underway. Fertility rates are down terribly. terribly. Fertility rates are down in Japan. They're down in Russia. In fact, the average lifespan for the average Russian adults is dismal. Is just dismal. And for those who are wondering where the future generation is, well, really, to put it bluntly, they really need to look in a garbage can behind a local Planned Parenthood or abortion clinic. That's basically what we're seeing is now with this ongoing basically the propagandization campaign on behalf of abortion and other so-called birth control methods. The rising commensurate with that has been basically the overall recession of the human population.
Well, you're right. I mean, it's understood, but you have to dig to find it, that replacement births are off.
Right.
However, that does not satisfy the flank of bioethicists, which is a strange thing to call them.
Right, yeah.
And also radical environmentalists.
Right.
Who are sold on the idea that even though the replacement births are falling off, we're still overcrowded.
Yeah.
They're busting out of the can.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Well, think about this. They are always radical environmentalists, Malthusian theoreticians with the State Department, what have you. They are always targeting the third world. The third world is just, and of course, the third world is people chiefly by what? People of a different skin tone, which of course the power elite, being raging Anglophiles, don't like.
That's right.
But here's the thing about that. Every hour, think about this, every hour in the third world, 400 children die from waterborne illnesses. Now, if 400 children are dying every hour, 24 hours a day, 400, how in the world could the third world be overpopulated? I mean, we're talking massive demographic bleed there, demographic implosion. There's just no way that they can substantiate this claim. And the old population bomb, as touted by Paul Ehrlich, and of course whose wife is a member, I don't know if she still is, but was a member of the Club of Rome, which of course touted the limits to growth, I believe it was, or was it the Global 2000 report? I forget which one, but it was basically a major Malthusian tract. His little population bomb and all his prognostications have fizzled out. He was, basically predicting by the 1970s massive famines, the death of the world's oceans, just these radical, eschatological theories and eschatological predictions, none of which came to pass.
Well, I tell you what, you're absolutely right, and let's remember something. The Club of Rome did produce a book written by one of its founding members, Aurelio Pecci, called The Chasm Ahead.
Yeah.
And you got Brzezinski at the same time writing between two ears, and they both of them are banging the drum like the world's going to end, and it's a chicken little stuff. And they always exaggerate.
Absolutely.
What might be the case.
Fully is just
too nice a word.
Oh yeah, these people specialize in it. They're loaded in it. I mean, it's not just as though there's some serious environmental problems, or as though there's some demographic inconsistencies or whatever. No, instead it's the end of the world is right around the corner. It doesn't matter what we do now. Even if we start killing people en masse, which most of them recommend, they even claim that at this point, any crash plan in population control would still not work.
Their math and science skills are very poor, but they're great at drawing up pictures that are very sensational and are very eye-catching. It's very captivating because you read it and it comes off like the movie Soylent Green. and then you look at they tell us basically that the world today or the future is going to be the equivalent of that movie, but in that movie you didn't have 60 countries, which is about a third of all nations, whose fertility rates are now below 2.1 children per woman. And that's where they are now. Half of those nations have 1.5 or less levels.
I'm sorry, go ahead, guys, finish off.
Oh, sure. Well, and another thing that they never took into consideration, and of course, this is part of their anti-human doctrine, because being that they adhere to this kind of Nietzschean belief that mankind must transcend its humanity, then the human condition, the condition of being human, is something to be reviled for them. What they never take into consideration, what an economist, I believe he's deceased now, Julian Simon, demonstrated in an outstanding book called The Ultimate Resource. With the growth of population, with demographic expansion, there is basically also more freer societies, more democracy, and by democracy I mean that in the representative Republican.
Right, the good form, yeah.
Right. There is also an overall enhancement of subsistence production. So subsistence production rises with population growth, and thus, what's the problem? Are we going to outstrip our resources? No, because more and more resources are becoming available because more and more people are generating them. And at the same time, with the growth of population, you have the emergence of a whole new class of innovators. The next generation may have the next, the next Einstein or whiz kid that will develop, some new form of renewable energy.
Well, but this outfit, the radical environmentalists, and I say radical because they would sooner kill you than a squirrel.
Right.
And I mean, there comes a time. Look, nobody wants to run over a poor thing, but I've heard people tell me they've gone out of the way and wound up in a head-on with another car. And I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, at least we averted disaster.
But going on through this, first of all, when things got weird, and there was probably a loss of momentum in the depopulation movement, they came out with peak oil, and you know how that was connected, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Also, some people have talked to me knowing you were going to come on, and one posited whether or not, if you think that there is, most are in replacement birds are falling off, but there are some that are not. Is it possible, even in our own culture, and I don't mean to be racist about it, I mean, if the card is there, it's there. I'm not playing it. But I want to know what you think, because it could be more about education than it is about race, and this goes for the whole world. Could it be that those in the lesser genetic pool are breeding more than those that would be considered of better genetic quality? Is that a possibility? Is that happening?
Well, I'm not quite...
No. This is not going anywhere.
Sure.
I just want to know whether or not, there are over-average births in places that probably are not,
I believe that they might be encouraging birth rates amongst specific populations that they might, see as, potential labor.
Yeah, Morlocks, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And, but those people still have the potential of being intelligent.
Of course.
Exposed.
But that's the case of environmental factors being of a lesser quality and deprived for them, being prevented for them to experience.
Absolutely.
You know the old argument about heredity and environment. Environment, I believe, can do a lot to make the playing field. But and here's what I'm saying too, because as you said, the Anglophiles that sit on top of the dung heap and are the elites, they have they're repugned by minorities, and in the end, they also won't care much for you and me because we're useless feeders in their eyes.
Right.
But they do have a contempt for minorities.
Right. And ultimately, these guys are the ultimate racists, as we put forward in the book, the expanded, revised edition of the Ascendancy and the Scientific Dictatorship. Basically, any preliminary examination of the human being, the human creature, will reveal that there is this universal anthropic template that is evident in all of us, in spite of the trivial little variations in, say, skin tone or slight variations in bone structure, what have you. All those things aside, there's an overall universal template to the human being. Well, these men adhere again to that Nietzschean belief, which is also eerily close resembles the Luciferian doctrine that humanity will overcome its humanity. Man will overcome being man, and man will cease to be man, and man will become something other than man. He will become an overman. He will become superhumanity. He will become God. And because if you want, in a Kantian sense, to characterize racism as, say, the maxima of racism universalized as misanthropy, overall hatred of all humanity, then these guys are loaded with it.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And and this goes along the lines about what we can do and to make sure that everybody has comforts and the necessities are not comforts. And that is, there's no reason why now of the planet that people can't have what they need through technology. But of course, that's being held back.
Right.
And nobody needs to be downtrodden except they're kept that way.
No. Well, this and again, this is just vintage Malthusianism. This is basically technological apartheid. The word apartheid basically means separate development, and that's what you see. Specific segments of the population are just basically denied certain forms of infrastructure, certain forms of sanitation, subsistence, what have you. And this is right from the prescriptions of Thomas Malthus. And in his tract on population, his essay on population, he basically endorsed these discriminative zoning policies where certain populations would be basically established near stagnant bogs where disease basically propagated. And of course these would be the undesirable segments of population. And eerily enough, ominously enough, he also promoted the advocacy of basically unwise sanitary practices. Telling people, well, hey, it's okay to, for instance, go and roll in pig feces, or something like that.
Don't knock if you haven't tried it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And also, ominously enough, vaccinations through vaccination policies. And of course, now we have, fast forward to today, we have the possibility of coerced vaccinations. And
they're horrible.
Yeah, I don't trust what's in the needle. I really don't. And I bet you 9 out of 10 Gulf War veterans will tell you not to trust it either.
Well, let me hit on a couple of things, and I want to move on because you made a lot of people's day with your remarks about UFOs the other day.
Oh, excellent.
I'm going to have to look back at that. A couple things. There was talk, as you well know, that AIDS in the late 70s was introduced separately into sub-Saharan Africa, and they also corralled males in New York, and let that loose. And then they went through the story about how it jumped the pond and all this other stuff. Again, they released it in Africa, and they targeted women because they're the breeders. All right, now, are you familiar with that story at all?
There's no doubt in my mind that it's actually that it's actually true.
It's cooked, yeah.
And if it's, as far as the research of Lynn Horowitz and John Judge and on that particular topic, I think that they really, when the vaccines were being tested there in San Francisco, they made it quite clear that who they wanted was promiscuous young gay males for it. Well, why? To me, it makes sense that in all likelihood is the truth. There's also some testimony before some congressional board. I can't remember which one it was, but where a doctor was basically talking about developing something that specifically attacks and destroys the immune system.
That's right.
And this was anybody can find it if they just go and look in the congressional records and all. So I think that there's truth to that.
it never really appears anywhere in nature at all.
No.
So it in all likelihood was somebody's pet project in depopulation, or in seeing how certain sectors of society dealt with it
and reacting. Yeah, sure.
Now, whether or not it was ever intended to stop being strictly a gay disease or an African disease, I can't say for certain. But nonetheless, it has, and it's of course contributed to the implosion of population as well. So that plays
into it as well. Sure.
Yeah, it plays to the advantage of a lot of people, a lot of different groups with Malthusian agendas benefited.
Oh yeah.
So
sure.
So
if I may chime in here,
yeah, absolutely.
One of the continents that has suffered the most from the AIDS pandemic has been Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Malachi Martin, the deceased researcher Malachi Martin, referred to the power elite as socio-political Darwinians. That is, they look to basically impose Darwinism on the world in political and geopolitical and social fashion. One of Darwin's the people that he targeted as a dysgenic retrograde race was none other than the Africans. In The Descent of Man, Darwin writes just openly racist material about them. He says that basically that they are the chasm between them and the chimpanzees or the baboons is is not very wide, and someday into the not so distant future, these savage races will be wiped out by the more civilized races of man.
Mm-hmm.
So again, being sociopolitical Darwinians, you can see where it would be most advantageous to the power elite to, if nothing else, sit on their hands and let Africa die.
All right.
Succumb to this AIDS pandemic.
Great segue to what I wanted also to say, part B. Are you guys familiar with the gentleman Romeo Dallaire?
No, I can't say I am.
Yeah.
He, great story, tragic throughout the whole thing, but a quote happy ending, if you would, for him. He is now an MP up in Canada. He was, I believe, a general in the United Nations. He certainly was a ranking officer, and he was sent to Africa. I think he might have been supposedly trying to get in between the forces in Rwanda.
Mm-hmm.
What he found out when he went down there thinking it was the real deal, he realized it was window dressing. And it almost flipped him out. When he came back to Canada, he went on a drunken binge. He could not believe what he saw, and he realized, and he named these two, he named the United Nations and the Vatican because there were Catholics involved in that down there. None of them did a thing to try to get in there. All they did was send down the appearance of a military force that could not fight their way out of a wet paper bag with what they were given. So here you've got a situation where it looks good that they send UN troops down, but no, they had no intention of diffusing the hostilities that were going on down there. So again, another deliberate undermining of trying to do something positive.
Yeah, well, another person that played into that was Pat Robertson, because Robertson basically got on the 700 Club and asked people to donate to basically get Rwandan refugees airlifted to Zaire. And what ended up happening was that Operation Blessing planes that were directly owned by Robertson were just basically taking diamond mining equipment to Zaire, because he had a diamond company that he owned with Mobutu Sese Seko when he was still alive, who was the president of Zaire at the time, and people that gave to the 700 Club probably didn't know that it was going towards basically making a profit off of diamonds as opposed to really helping the Rwandan people.
Yeah. By the way, did you catch Robertson on the cover of Time with his lion's paw Masonic grip?
No, I did not. I do know that when he came out with that book a few years back, the New World Order book, I thought that it was a good book, but I always got the idea that it was not a product of his own mind, and now there is talk that it was probably ghost-written. He went to work. One of the first people that he was employed by was J. Peter Grace. J. Peter Grace was a member of the CMP when he was still alive, as is Robertson, a member of the CMP, and Grace baptized Robertson's children. But what most people don't know about J. Peter Grace is that he basically ran a kind of AFL-CIO group that was in fact a front for the Central Intelligence Organization to basically go and destabilize countries in Central America. And also he was the one that was responsible for Otto Ambros, the Nazi chemist that was the head of IG Farben, finding residency here in the United States, and Ambros went to work for J. Peter Grace. And this is just another one of those examples of a Trojan horse, so to speak, which is pretty sad because there are people that really depend on Robertson for spiritual guidance.
I know. I was one of them, but no more. But again, I've been listening. I don't know what got into me this year. I don't observe Christmas as such, but this year I started listening just to the music. Rock and roll stuff, and old time, rocking around the Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Only because it reminds me so much of lost members of the family of times gone by. I think about the memories now. Having said that, one of the songs that keeps popping up is the song by Band Aid. Where it talked about it must be Christmas tonight, and it said feed the world and all that.
Yeah.
I think of George Clooney's efforts now, and I really do believe they're meritorious. But again, it's pretty clear that if humankind were allowed to solve problems, they could, but they're not.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the strangest things, I think, and you'll know, like when I talk to people about desalination, and it's feasible. I mean, the technology's there. The first thing they always say to you about why it can't happen, because they've been brainwashed, is because it's too expensive.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, well, folks, okay, then just check this out. How come every cruise line and every Navy seems to find it's doable?
Right.
Can you imagine a time when we can stand on the shore of any great body of water and actually get dehydrated?
Right.
Because we're told that we can't convert 70% of what the Earth is made of.
Right.
And and I know that that's a crock.
Yeah, that is a crock. It's also a crock that we have to be dependent on oil as much as we are.
You got it. There's another one.
Hans and Fleischmann basically came up with cold fusion, and it was working, and they were so criticized here in the United States that they had to go over to France, where they received funding from the Japanese, and have continued their work over there. And I think that if we had really gotten behind that we could have basically got America off of its addiction to foreign oil.
Yeah, not to mention that there's several other alternatives in oil production itself. And the thing about it is whenever any of these, and I'm sure there's a few snake oil salesmen amongst the alternative fuel crowd.
Agreed. Okay.
Yeah, they're going to be there in everything.
Exactly.
But the thing about it is that any alternative that is ever presented in terms of fuel and in terms of resources, they automatically get crucified. And the peak oil crowd, they won't hear of it. They won't hear of any sort of alternative form of oil production. It's always always going to be with them this idea of stripping back infrastructure, throttling back production. Let's move to this neo-tribal, savage, new civilization.
Neo-feudalism is where we're going.
Right, exactly. Right. It's very much a green feudalism. And I was listening to, I forget who it was, one particular peak oil proponent, talking about this world energy grid, and basically how this world energy grid would work was certain segments of the population on the world would have electricity for a brief period of time, then the grid would shut down and snap into operation somewhere else. And it would be on for a brief period of time, and then it would basically shut down there, and so on, and so on, and so on. So people would only have electricity, heat, warm and cold water for a brief period of time in this world energy grid, which you and I know will not work. I mean, if you have a hospital, 24/7, you have to have energy. You have to have electricity and light.
You can't shut off the incubators to the babies.
Yeah, and everything. But again, these people being just rabid Malthusians, seeing the human population as, the source of all woes, would probably have no problem with basically, infanticide and abortion.
Sure.
In fact, what's his face, Stanton, who wrote the article "Oil and People," in that article, he just openly endorses it. In fact, he says in a Darwinian world, right and wrong, an absolute morality no longer has a place and everything. But see, this world energy grid is their solution, their solve-all for everything. And whenever you start to suggest, well, what about shale oil production, or what about looking into the abiotic oil phenomenon, seeing if there's any veracity to those claims? No. We're going with the world oil, the world power grid. That is the solution, and we'll just use abortion, infanticide, what have you. And if the population is sick and on the brink of extinction, oh well, that's just too bad and everything. Mother Earth must go on.
Good people, most people, cannot understand and really disbelieve that there are people out there who have this mentality and also are in places of importance. But this mentality has been in place in the Western world, certainly for the entire 20th century, and of course went underground because of World War II.
Right.
But you see it starting to rise again, and you start to wonder, with some of these people, are they really deluded into believing this pie in the sky, end, or it's amazing to me that they could buy into it, and they are absolutely driven to this end, and I can't understand what in the world got in their lives that they could be so blind and to chase this down. They don't understand that they're going to be sent to the glue factory too.
Right, exactly. Most of the people that wind up, big red flag. Okay, I am not pointing fingers at anybody right now, but one of the major minorities that supports the efforts of, say, Planned Parenthood has been the African American community. I used to have a girlfriend who was African American, and she herself had an abortion, and she was although she realized that the abortion had really messed her up biologically, and not to mention emotionally and spiritually, she still gave her support to Planned Parenthood, and still was very much pro-choice. But the thing about it is what a lot of African Americans don't realize when they go and support these Planned Parenthood initiatives. Margaret Sanger, who was the founder of Planned Parenthood, was a humongous supporter of Nazism,
That's right.
of the Nazi eugenics campaigns. She basically developed what was called the Negro Project, where certain populations of black Americans were targeted for propagandization, for sterilization, for the establishment of basically abortion clinics in those particular segments of the population, and the whole purpose was to basically call the the African American community, because it was to her it was basically it was what she called the Negro problem and everything, because these people were dysgenics. But see, the very same people that these initiatives and these projects and these programs and campaigns target are the very same people who are supporting them. And it's just it's the irrationality of it all.
I think it's just part of the cruel mentality of the power elite to get the people that they've targeted to act as their cheerleaders.
Yeah.
But that's perfect, though. What a perfect scenario that is.
You know, Alfred Rosenberg was Jewish, and he put together a lot of the Nazi religion.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, this is I think that it's
Karl Marx was Jewish, and he wrote the book A World Without Jews, and many of his letters between him and Frederick Engels were vehemently anti-Jewish, just replete with anti-Semitic remarks, and that's just this weird phenomena in people.
I think that the power elite intentionally brings about such a situation so that they can rationalize it all in their own mind as being self-destruction on the part of the target population, as opposed to them conducting any kind of genocidal policy against that specific population.
We're gonna
it helps them sleep better at night.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there, but the point is also remember, too, that there's never a shortage of people who will sell anybody out and will sell out their own for filthy lucre.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to join you back in 10 minutes. We're going to go to part 2, guys, okay?
Gotcha.
All right, see you in a little bit.
Okay.
Bye-bye.